Okay, with the creative team of Dark Circles, Suswana and Jean-Sebastien. Jean is the writer, Suswana is the director. It is a poetry film. It's 4 minutes long and it's pretty fantastic. Good job on you guys.
Thank
Yeah.
Tell me about so you're in Los Angeles, Jean, you're in New York, right? Is that how you guys collaborated? You guys collaborated bi-coastal?
yeah, well, I did go over to New York when we filmed it.
Okay,
So Gene and I originally met in New York before I moved to LA, kept in touch, and after I moved out here, we continued collaborating.
gotcha.
Um, yeah.
Where
Yeah,
did
I
you
think.
guys where did you guys meet?
Oh, we met in college actually, around a film festival. We had a friend who had written a quick short film for I think it was a 48-hour film challenge.
Okay.
And we were both two of the actors. Shushino was playing the main character, and I was one of the side characters on there. And yeah, I thought she was really talented, and we just started talking from there.
And you guys got along?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So what tell me about so Gene, you wrote the poem. So when did you guys kind of like start talking about kind of turning this into a film?
So I wrote the poem in 2019. And I think it was one of those things where as soon as I wrote it, I felt that there was something more to it than just having it in a written form or having it be performed. But I actually didn't really start collaborating with Shushan on this until probably 2021. Originally, I was in talks with one of my friends and just casually thinking about how this could be visualized and put onto screen, but we never got serious about it. But then after Shushna and I worked on a film together in 2021, I realized, okay, this is somebody who has really good vision for the screen, and I think we could probably push something here.
In the synopsis it said it's like a kind of an episodic series. Is there more to is there other episodes coming in the future?
Yeah. So it's an 9 episode series. I always
That episode, so yeah, just about.
Yeah,
Okay.
9 episodes. They're all each of them are, short lengths, 3 to 4 minutes. And we're planning on distributing it through like social media as a digital series. And we basically filmed Dark Circles as a way to test the market and see what the interest is for something like this so that we can get funding to film all of the other episodes.
Gotcha. So it's like a proof of concept.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So thematically, what's this poem about?
Thematically, if we're going to a high level of abstraction, it's essentially light versus dark within a person, right? So in this particular poem, and that's throughout the series itself, but in this particular piece, you have somebody who has lost someone. It's heavily implied that it's a romantic relationship, but it can be extended out to other types of relationships as well. And they're feeling just this gaping loss within them. And that loss is manifesting itself in the form of dark circles under their eyes, and that it prevents them from being able to find sleep, find contentment, and all of these things. And ultimately, it is up to them to save themselves from sort of this train downwards, right? It's just reminding yourself that you're somebody who is worthy of love, and it doesn't have to come from outside. It can come from within. This light that clears up the dark circles can come from within. So that's really the general premise of the piece.
Gotcha. And so then the future episodes are going to be with that same kind of theme, but different kinds of stories.
Essentially, yeah, just it's a continuation of this battle of light and dark. Each episode represents the Dark Circles is actually the supposed to be the penultimate one in this
Yeah.
story, but each episode represents a different battle between light and dark that somebody goes through in their daily life. And the final episode is sort of this reconciliation between the two and understanding that light and dark aren't two separate entities. It's just kind of a balance that we have to maintain within ourselves.
Exactly. The gray area.
Exactly.
Yeah, I call it the gray area. We always have to live in that kind of we'll never master it, but we always got to find that balance, right? So
100%. Yeah, I think I realized very recently that life is just a series of finding balance, right? Like eating, but not overeating, drinking water, but not drinking too much water.
yeah,
Like just the simplest of things are still all about balance.
yeah. Well, I can even take it further where like if there's something good that happens, it's like the I Ching theory is like there's something bad that happens simultaneously. So
Yeah.
that's what keeps us even.
Yeah, exactly.
So are there other poems written?
Yeah.
Yeah, they are written already. We have script breakdowns for all of them, and sort of like a clear like visual language thread all of them together. It's just, what it always comes down to, money. And getting the funding. But yeah.
So let's talk about the film itself. So Gene, you performed in the film, correct?
Yes, I did.
Did you always want it? Was that always like your vision to make sure that you performed in it?
It is something that we talked about at length. I love acting, but it's not something that I've ever formally studied outside of college. I minored in theater and took a couple of acting classes there and things like that. But just when I was writing these pieces, I just saw myself in them
Yeah.
in to such an extent that I was like, I really want to give this a try and be in front of the camera for this. And so I remember while Shushna was in LA and I was in New York, we did like a video audition. She was like, if you can't convince me on this call, then we're finding somebody else. So
Wow,
I
she's
think I did a decent enough job.
well, listen, like we do poetry readings and we hire an actor or a performer to do the readings. And sometimes they bring a new interpretation to it, but I
Mm,
understand that there's nuance to your poetry, there's nuance to you. Basically, you know the poem better than anybody else, right? So you
right.
can convey you can evoke the emotions that you're trying to convey in your poem.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is that as I've grown, older and further from that, from the time when I wrote that poem, I'm understanding it in new ways that now have me criticizing the way that I chose to perform some aspects. And so it's definitely an interesting balance as you continue to get deeper into your work.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like filmmaking, right? Like you're not if you think nobody ever like thinks your film's perfect, right? There's always room for improvement. So that's what keeps us going, right?
Yeah.
You ever hear a filmmaker go, that was the best, that's the best work I ever done. That's perfect. Like, what a great piece of art.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. There were there were definitely compromises that I had to make in the edit for this as well. But I mean, ultimately I am happy with how it turned out. But
I
yeah.
have to say the editing is really good in this film because it's like
Oh, thank you.
because like poetry films, I see a lot of them, and it's like you have to. It's still a visual medium, right? So
Mhm.
you have to, and basically, it's this guy talking in a room, but the way he
Mm.
did the black and white was the black and white always in your envisioned, or did you figure that out editing?
Yeah, I figured it out in the editing. Actually, I figured it out when we were putting together a concept deck for a grant that we were applying to get funding for the whole series. And I was pulling some still frames from other movies as references. And I was like, oh, I really like the black and white aesthetic and like the contrast of that with like this really warm lighting. And so I decided to try it out in the proof of concept, and I was very happy with how that looked and felt.
So in its basic sense, when he's talking to the camera or he's talking in his poetry, it's in color and he's alone. And then when the girl's there, the person that it's in black and white, I guess, right? Like so it's sort of like so we have that so subconsciously we like I'm only seeing this on second viewing, but in subconsciously we're understanding that the black and white is sort of in his head, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that was sort of I was trying to figure out and, play with how visually and sonically we can establish the difference between, what's happening in his head, what's happening in real life, and maybe even have viewers question a little about, what actually is happening in real time.
And then you got those two like lights in the background that are constant even in the black and white scenes. What was the vision for those two kind of lights that the two kind of light stands that you have that are constant throughout the film?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't want a lot of light source. But I did want to. So actually, one of the lights is literally a practical. It's a lamp that's
Mhm.
supposed to be in his room.
Yeah.
And Yeah, and that was there just because, we wanted to establish that even while he's having all of these, dark thoughts in his head, and is in despair and in this, like in the context of the series, like we said, this is the penultimate episode, and it's, after when a viewer watches the episodes in sequence, it's almost like we we think he's at the end of losing this battle with himself.
Mhm.
And so I really wanted that light source to be constant as like a reminder that like there is still light, even when you're having these dark thoughts about yours and battling with yourself. So
Yeah, so like thematically it works. Yeah, so totally. And then so the room itself is bare. You're very conscious about showing the walls and like and then in the bareness of it. Like where did you shoot it?
we shot it in a studio
Yeah.
in Queens, New York. Or sorry, no, in Brooklyn, New York. Um, yeah, we shot it against a white cyc, and brought in some minimal props. I am sort of a huge fan of minimalism. And so really just wanted the focus to be on the poem and you know, making it also, did also want to emphasize that like he is like alone, and feeling lonely.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I think
The
one, it works visually, but it's also consistent with me as a person because I don't have any posters or things hanging on my walls, like outside in the living room and stuff like that. Yes, but in my personal bedroom, there's none of that, so it works.
there's none of that. And so then you have like the him talking to himself, I guess, right? Where we're in the hood and who is that and there's a shot of like him touching his own eye. I'm assuming he didn't touch his own eye. How did you get that shot in?
yeah, that was another friend of ours, Jard. He's also
Is
another
the
film.
stand in for the thumb?
Yeah, he was our body double.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, so we did some editing magic there to make it seem like Gene was rubbing his own eye. But yeah.
I remember talking to Shushan about that, and I was like, if anybody has ever seen my thumb, they're not gonna believe this. But
Oh,
it was,
yeah.
yeah,
But that's your thumb on camera though, right? So that's all that matters.
yeah.
So tell me about the actress. It's Zoe, right?
Yeah, Zoe. Um she is another friend of ours who went to college with both of us. It was sort of the week of the shooting and we hadn't found anybody for the role. And then I remembered that Zoe is somebody who might be interested, and she's not like a professional actress or by any means, but she is somebody that I've always associated with creative energy. And so we invited her onto set, and she was really happy to play the part.
Well,
No,
it's fair to say that she's photogenic.
Yes, yeah,
I'm on her Instagram page. She's got a pretty big following on Instagram.
yeah.
yeah. She's also an entrepreneur as well,
She's going to
so yeah,
business school,
you
Warwick
wanna,
Business
yeah.
School. You learn a lot on social media, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, she was great. Like it's not it's kind of like a not I wouldn't say a throwaway role, but it's like she's not like you know what I mean. She's in fantasy of his head, right? So you're kind of she's playing that role.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
I think
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think it's one of those roles where the right person leaves a lasting impression.
Yeah.
A different person might not be as memorable or something like that, but the right person in that type of role leaves a lasting impression. So that's cool.
So if like in an ideal world and you have the money, I give you a bunch of money and you're going to shoot all the episodes, does she show up again?
No, I think one of the things that we had in mind was to not have like because um I guess I don't know how much to reveal, but light takes on different manifestations throughout the episodes, and so we just want to make sure that we're always changing out like the other person, or the memories, or the former relationships or things like that that are coming up throughout, because there's another piece or two that are about relationship things, and so we just don't want to keep it consistent because people are going to build a story out of that consistency, right? And so we just want to make sure that it's different so that it's not hyper fixated on this one dynamic between these two characters.
Gotcha. And then so the editing you brought in a new an editor to kind of collaborate with, right?
Yeah.
And then what about the sound design and did you re-record like the poem and getting all the sound, because it's very important obviously for this film for having a solid sound design.
Yeah, yeah, that's so yeah, we worked with an editor, Hector, also goes by Eddie, of Project Feel, which is a filmmaker collective based out of Queens, New York. And within that collective, we also worked with Franco, who composed the music. Um, and then I brought in my friend Mikey to do the final sound design and sound mixing. And we did not re-record the poem, so all of the audio that's in there is the live audio that we
Oh, okay.
recorded during the filming. But Mikey did work his magic
Yeah.
in really making the sound design come to life and adding sort of this like a lot of the sounds that are in it is actually the sound of water and waves, and wanting it to feel have this sort of ethereal quality to it.
Well, it's a very solid sound design, and it's nice, like it's all kind of puts it all together because it's like it's that balance, right? It's sort of like light and dark, but meaning that the jump on that analogy where it's like the poem has to be the center of attention, so the music can't overshadow the poem, but it still has to have music, so you gotta balance it all together, plus the sound effects that's needed in a film like this.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think in one of the first cuts with the music was overpowering
Yeah.
the poem, and I definitely worked both with Franco and with Mikey to find the right balance, and also like where there just is no sound at all, so that we can really let the impact of Gene's words hit, and also feel like, we're lost inside of him. So
Yeah, figuring out that balance between poetry and music though is so real. That wasn't the only time Shushana and I have had to combine the two. We had a live show, an off-Broadway show that we produced last summer, and we had to figure out that balance in a live setting. And so it's no longer a scenario where, you get to go into post and figure out the levels. Like you
Yeah.
have to make sure it's right at that moment. And so yeah, definitely something that is tough to do, but I think we're definitely getting better at it.
Yeah, it's a nice solid job. So how was the live show?
I want to say phenomenal. I might be biased. I think I think it was great.
Yeah.
Shushna, if you want to speak more to that.
yeah, no, the live show was definitely a really great experience. Yeah, it was Gene, it was a solo show of Gene. It was about 40 minutes of him performing a full set, with a live band playing original music that we composed specifically for the show, and with projections. And that's definitely a very different set of variables than filming. Um, but we got it all together, and the audience definitely really enjoyed the show, and it felt like something different that people hadn't done yet.
Yeah,
So
that's so cool. Are you guys gonna do that again?
we certainly want to.
Shoot it. We should film it.
Yeah, well,
Over.
we actually did film the first
Yeah.
show, but we haven't, we're still working on editing that. So
That's one that we did have to go back and re-record audio for though.
Sure. That makes
Yeah.
total sense. Yeah. Well, yeah. They do that in concerts too, right? So
yeah.
Yeah, which I didn't know until I was doing it myself. And I was like, "Oh, interesting."
yeah.
Cool.
Well, that's a whole other art form, right? ADR work. Like it's every film that's Hollywood film that's made, they re-record the audio over again.
Yeah.
So they do so basically, and they usually 90% of Hollywood films are ADR, right? So basically, meaning that they use the voices, but that's an art form as an actor because you got to match yourself, right? And you got to match that emotion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's something that's not talked about often, but that's part of acting on screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think the general audience is aware of that, but I definitely like the more I've gotten into film, have also like when I watch a film or a TV show, like can see where the edit is happening to
Yeah,
like where they might have to mask the ADR,
yeah,
and so we're like seeing the backs of people instead.
yeah.
Um,
That's
but
when you know that watching films and TV is not fun anymore. It's a job. Yeah.
See, I'm grateful because I don't have that eye or that
No,
ear yet, so I'm just gonna
it's brutal. Yeah.
leave that to y'all.
But at the same time, it's like for me, it's when I'm so into the story, like I was watching The Wild Robot, and it was like I was so into the story, I wasn't paying attention to anything. I was just watching the film on screen. So you know it's a good film when you're not nerding and going, oh, blah blah blah. Like you're not thinking in your head, right? So fantastic. So yeah, I think there's something there. There's one thing I want to point out here too is that it's kind of a cliche, but what I got out of the film is that we're our own worst enemy in a sense. We're like our heads kind of spin when we're alone in this room, and COVID obviously has it like there's it's kind of very recent for us. We're just kind of spinning in a way, and your performance, your poetry is spinning. Like you're trying to bounce off yourself, but you can't, right?
It's so interesting you mentioned COVID specifically for this because as I mentioned, I wrote this piece in 2019 and I wrote it at a time where my poetry just wasn't going to, levels of complexity. I started really writing poetry in the summer of 2019 and I wrote this in the fall. And up until that point, I was writing things that I could only describe as very basic. And so that was one of the first pieces where I actually, tried to dig deeper into myself. And in COVID, that ended up being an entire transformation for my work in that I really leaned into that experience of digging deeper into myself and figuring out how I really feel about things and writing about it and, trying to connect with myself on those topics. And so, yeah, I think it was really relevant that you mentioned COVID because contextually, this was, I guess, like a precursor to the poetry that I would then go on to write a couple years later.
Gotcha. So you're a little bit ahead of your time.
For myself, yeah.
Yeah. No, to the emotion of the audience, because it was like things resonate within the time frame that we're in, right?
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly a poem that has more grounding in a post-COVID world because I think so many of us are more self-aware of our emotions in that post-COVID space. So
that's a
yeah.
very optimistic point of view. Yeah. I thought that everybody ran away from their emotions, but I like what you just said. Yeah.
You got to be aware of them to run away, right? So
Good one. That's a nice one. All right. Well, congratulations on the film. I wish you guys the best of luck on future films. I know you guys are working on different individual projects, working on projects together. So I'm assuming we'll talk again, and let's talk again when the next film is made.
Yeah, thank you so
thank
much.
you
Thank
so
you.
much. Pleasure to meet you.